What I've got on my bench right now, 2 blueberry inserts. The blueberry insert is an all blue GMT insert, for those of you who don't know. There have been different stories about where they came from. Some say they were a special order for the United Arab Emirates. Some say that they were a special order from a service center. Some say they may not be original Rolex parts altogether. And original or not, it's incredibly rare to find one of these blueberry inserts out in the wild. So the fact that I'm able to actually compare 2 of them is wild. I'm super excited to actually look at both of these inserts together and compare them and to see whether or not these appear to be original Rolex parts or indeed something else. So let's figure this out and invite you to join us. Now, it's widely known that there is a sort of a faint, almost ghost triangle within the triangle. As you guys can see that there. It's almost like somebody etched a triangle within the triangle. What I've noticed though is that if you look at a certain angle, every number has that sort of ghost line inside it. Even the dots at a certain angle have a ghost dot inside it on this particular one. So that is really interesting. Look at that 8 there. So I don't know of any other insert that I've seen that on. So this is specific to the blueberry. So that's this insert. Let's see if the other one shows internal consistency across variants. And this one definitely has that sort of line. Oh, there's even some sort of like an alien invasion, if you will. These inserts, there is a hypothesis that I'm starting to entertain that these inserts may have been born from Area 51. See, yeah, these have it too. Almost like a ghost etching of the silver digits and numbers. Now let's look at some things that stand out to me. There's like what painters would call like an orange peel to the surface. There's a little porosity of sorts on the surface. That's something that I would expect to see from an original Rolex insert. Let's compare this, for example, with the other one, just again I like to look at the same area. Yeah, same sort of porosity, same level of shine, as it were, coming back at us, reflection of light. Let's look at another insert. Now this particular insert that I'm looking at is a fuchsia. So you can see how it turns to fuchsia there. This is a really nice example. It's known that the fuchsia inserts were done in the late 60s, really early 70s. You can see how that porosity is still very similar. The surface is exactly the same, if anything a little more porous. But there is no ghost number, there's no etching. So that's an immediate difference, something we see different. Let's look at another insert. This one here is from a watch from 1977. And you can see again the similar consistency there in the finish, but also again no lines or ghost etching within the shapes. I want to compare this with a known aftermarket blueberry. So this is an aftermarket blueberry. Let's have a look at how this looks under the microscope. Okay, so right away you can see this aftermarket one has a different reflection of light. It's not quite as bright and brilliant. It's a little bit more dull, and the porous nature of the original inserts is just not there. It's not quite there. It's not very smooth, as you can see, but also does not have that inner etching shape. Before we move on, another Rolex insert from the 70s, GMT insert. You can see this remains very shiny, but also has some real decent wear in there. That kind of wear is evidentiary of the time frame, the fact that this has lived quite a long life. That's not some patina person could just easily put on an insert without it looking purposeful. There's no etching, there's no ghost number inside of the silver print. Now let's look at and compare this blueback insert. Came later on, so we were just looking at sort of redback era inserts and comparing that with the blueberry. This is a blueback, let's compare this. And also here you could see very shiny, because it's also a bit newer, but also, you know, still no etch mark, as it were, no lines inside the silver digits and shapes. As I'm going to now, I'm going to compare both blueberry inserts in terms of their font. Again, you can see here this sort of these circles within the circles, or the lines within the shapes remain somewhat consistent insofar as that they're there. They're not exactly the same, but they are certainly both there, which is unique to the blueberry that I haven't seen on other Rolex inserts yet. The sheen or the surface sort of reflectivity is about exactly the same. We look at, for example, this serif there matches somewhat the serif here, and same thing with this. There's a little bit of variation here, but it looks more like this was just maybe rubbed off. It's the same with this. The edges here are a little more defined than they are here for this 2. The edge on the top of this 1 and 18 on the bottom one is less defined than the one on the top, but you know, these are just some variations. Overall, these fonts are, I think, exactly identical. Look at the amount of serif on 16 at that end of the 6 there. That's really interesting. Sort of big flat serif. That's, to me, indicative of the fact that whoever made these inserts, I think, was using the same method or font script, whatever it would be called, to produce these. Let's compare that with an original fuchsia insert. I want to look at that 6 and 16. So we're wildly difficult to hold 3 inserts like this at the same time. One of the things that stands out to me, besides the fact that the fonts are a little different, is how much distance there is between the edge, the top of the 6 here, and the edge of the insert versus these other ones. You see the numbers come up almost fully to the edge there, which is a notable difference. Another thing that I notice is that the Rolex insert here, at least the fuchsia insert I should say, because these may be Rolex, I'm not sure yet, but the fuchsia inserts, or the insert that we're looking at, has a very pronounced line between the blue and the silver parts, whereas for these, for instance, we do see some areas in which the edges of those numbers do seem to sort of like almost fade off, rather than the sharp delineation of the number that's found in the fuchsia insert here. So let's look at some of these known aftermarket. You can see right away that there's a lot of difference there in the font. There's absolutely no serif at the end of the 2s. There's almost no space between the bottom here and the bottom of the insert. So that's a distinct variation. Whereas we do see some more space on the actual one. All right, so some real big differences there. And you can also see the difference in the surfaces. Whereas the surface of this aftermarket one has almost like a dull appearance, the one on the blueberry is shiny and reflective in more of a satin rather than a matte finish, which is what I would expect from a Rolex insert. Again, we look to compare the surface variation, surface reflection you see between the actual fuchsia and the blueberry. They're very much the same. Let's look at the other one. This one would be a later 70s insert, so presumably around the same time frame, and we see that is also very much the same in terms of the surface. There's a lot more space, again, between the end of the number and the edges of the insert on this one versus the blueberry. Another thing I noticed when taking the inserts off is the thickness, the apparent thickness, and so I measured the edges. This one on the left is the blueberry, the genuine blueberry as it were, and then this one is the aftermarket, and the blueberry is a hair thicker than this aftermarket one as well. I notice it's a little bit stiffer, as it sort of doesn't have as much torsional flex as the aftermarket one does. which is something that I tend to notice about Rolex's inserts, is that they do tend to be a little stiffer than most aftermarket pieces. So obviously without bending them to the point of compromising them, I am just sort of noticing the extent to which there's sort of a modus of elasticity across inserts. All right, there's one more test I'm going to run here, but I'm going to do this off camera because I don't want the fakers of these things to know what I'm about to do. But I will report back on my findings. What does this all mean? It means that I'm still a little unsure. My gut's actually telling me that these are a genuine Rolex part. And the reason is because of the sort of the stiffness of the inserts themselves. I've never seen an aftermarket insert that sort of comes close to Rolex in terms of stiffness. Also the consistency internally between examples. Even though, like we saw some variations in the fonts, I think the consistency nevertheless is there, especially things like the granular levels of serif. Another thing that sort of shows me and gives me a little bit of confidence that they are in fact genuine Rolex parts is that the finish is like a very distinct satin finish. You know, you saw as well as I did, there are variations between these and some of the Rolex Pepsi inserts, as well as this black GMT insert. So that's not necessarily confusing or out of the ordinary for Rolex inserts of that time and era. I did measure the thickness of the sidewalls of each insert, and there was consistency with the thickness as well. The only one that stood out as different was the known aftermarket one. Completely unrelated collectors here. I do believe that it may indeed be Rolex. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a sort of scientific approach to learning more about these inserts and seeing if we can get to the bottom of the actual elusive and interesting blueberry. And I just want, before we go, there was one other test that I did off camera, and I did this off camera because I, again, don't want to give the people that create fake inserts the understanding of what it is I'm looking for. But I will say this, there was consistency between the blueberries and the original Rolex inserts. So this also further solidifies my opinion that the blueberries are in fact real Rolex inserts.